Really, I don't know if Iman Shumpert's going to play, but if he plays, how are you going to stop?
Well, I think the first thing it always starts with him and their team, and where he's really hurt us has been in transition. Shooting threes. So I think getting back is really important. Getting our defense set is really important. Certainly that starts from the offense. Taking care of the ball. Generating good shots. Tough offensive possessions make it certainly difficult, at this level to get back in transition and stop those things. And, for him, he made some tough shots here the first game, but some of it got going by him getting some threes in transition.
Is it? I think they've shot like 43% from three against you all this year. Is a lot of that because of the pace that they're playing at, and you guys it kind of having an effect on the way that y'all play offense?
Well, obviously we're trying to play fast. We're not going to slow down. That's the way we need to play. But I think sometimes, with the pace, a lot of it has to do with being able to set your defenses. What kind of offensive possessions do you have? If you have a high number of turnovers, especially live ball turnovers, now the game is getting into a situation where, they're out in transition. Same thing for us. When we're forcing a lot of turnovers, that ignites us on the break, that gets us out going, and allows us to put points up quickly and go on runs. So the biggest thing is you want to have good quality offensive possessions, because generally those good offensive possessions have a positive impact on your defense.
Billy, early on that second unit, one of the things that was working pretty well was Dennis and Nerlens in pick and roll. They've missed on it quite a bit lately.
Yeah.
Dennis said one of the things his teams have scouted a little bit. They're paying more attention to it. What do you do to get back on track?
Yeah, I think that the one thing that's going to be good, is Dennis is a really, really smart player. And I think Nerlens has got a really good feel in pick and roll. But I think the one thing that we can do better in terms of helping them coaching staff-wise is, when Dennis, to start the year, it was all with Steven. Then he kind of went back with Nerlens. Then he kind of was back with Steven. He's back. So I think what we've got to be able to do is just have those two guys work together. Nerlens is really good in terms of getting to the front of the rim and being able to put the ball up there. But there are times where that's not open, and getting the ball to him a little bit earlier, and letting him play in the pocket, so to speak, when he can't get all the way to the rim. And I think it's just those guys continuing to work. I think some of the things that those guys have gone through, to your point, is healthy, because it allows those two guys to work together and grow together, which is what we need.
How important, you guys have not shot the ball real consistently, especially in that second unit, so how important is that those guys, you get some kind of offense out of those guys?
Yeah, you want to be able to do that. It all depends on the coverage that they're going against and attacking. I think they've got to work together. They've got to have a good chemistry together and a connection together. But I think that takes time. This is the first year these guys have played together, and to your point, like the one thing that was really effective was, those lobs getting behind the defense. Sometimes, they're not allowing Nerlens to get behind the defense, and sometimes he's trying to get behind the defense, and sometimes he needs to catch it a little bit earlier. Sometimes Dennis can be in situations where he's not committing too early to making a decision, but he's kind of holding on to the ball. So there's all little things that go on that I think those two can work together, and we'll try to help them be able to do that.
It seemed like there was a little bit more movement, some more touches with that second unit at the beginning of possessions.
Yeah.
If that's correct, what impact do you think that had on the high shooting percentage that the bench had last night?
Yeah, I think it helps. Getting out in transition is important, and then I think getting the ball moving a little bit. Trying to get the ball ahead of the defense, where you're trying to create closeouts where those guys can play where someone's running at them. And I think a lot of times, when we get off to a possession where maybe the ball has not really started moving effectively enough, it's not like we've got a lot of guys in the second unit just going to start breaking guys down off the dribble and generating offense for either themselves or others. Dennis is very good at that. And to, Brett's point, those two guys in pick and roll has been really effective. But, how do you get Alex more involved? How do you get Hami cutting? I thought we had more of that in the game, last night, which, to your point, I think helped that second unit.
Paul and Dennis are usually out there before some of those guys are coming off the bench after having not played at all. Do you see those guys kind of getting a guy a touch, or maybe trying to run some dribble handoffs or things just to get them in the flow
Yeah, I
of the
think
game?
so. I thought Alex got in the game early, which was good. He got a couple shots, and then he came off a pick and roll and made a 15-foot jump shot, and we put him in some screening actions where he can kind of cut and move and play. And then the ball coming back to Dennis a little bit later a lot of times, and allowing him to create once the defense has moved. So I think I need to do a better job just continuing to try to help those guys evolve and grow out, what we're doing offensively there with that second unit. And but I thought last night was a step in the right direction.
You look at what Paul's doing. Is it just more of a comfort level second year being here? Some things maybe you guys have learned about him in the first year. What's led to his just?
Well, I think there's probably, I think everybody's learned a little bit more about Paul just being around him for a year. He's a very, very humble guy. He's down to earth. He's a great guy to work with. It's never about him. It's always kind of about the team. So I think last year for him, he was trying to fit in. And, I think this year he's probably tried to help, more in a leadership role. And probably understanding who he's playing with. He's got a better feel for the guys he's playing with. He's more comfortable. And make no mistake, he's a great player. And I think, great players, once they get acclimated, to a situation, then I think you see truly who they are. And I think their own individual talent comes out. And I think last year coming in here, he's trying to feel his way out. And now he's got a much, much better feel. But he's put the work in. I think going into this off season, last year going into the off season probably allowed him to prepare probably totally differently than he prepared the year before. So I think there's a lot of variables that have gone into how well he's performed. And you know what? He puts the time in, he puts the work in, and he's been really, really diligent, all summer and through training camp and up to this point in time in the season.
Billy, what have you thought about Steven's Euro step?
It's good. It's good. Yeah, he did nice. It was nice. I mean, I think that I think one of the, and I really mean that seriously, because I think one of the hardest plays for a big man to make is, big man's running down the middle of the floor and the ball gets thrown back to them. A lot of times it can lead to a turnover or a charge. So I give Steven a lot of credit for his awareness to be able to step around somebody, because those are really, really hard plays. I don't know if you realize how difficult that is. Nerlens had a play, I think it was against the Clippers, where we kind of got the ball thrown back to him, and he kind of caught it right in the crowd, and a ball got popped from him. It was a turnover. Like, those are hard plays for big, because the bigs are running to get to the rim, because that's their job, where they're going to offensive rebound. But when the ball gets snapped back to them quickly like that, at that size and the speed at which they're moving, it's really hard to make an effective play. So I think Steven doing that shows, I think, his agility as a player.
Is it also part of he seems more aggressive in the post, and just even to try that move as a 7-footer, more confidence in what he's in his offensive game?
Yeah, I mean, Steven, every year that I've been here, I feel like he's grown, he's gotten better and better. He works. I think he's a really bright guy. I think he learns a lot through his experiences. He's gotten more and more confident, I think, in a low post and playing from the low post. He's a good passer out of the low post. But he's had some big scoring games for us, and I think it's great to have that kind of threat, because we need to for our team, because of the way we've been shooting the three up and down. You want to be able to put pressure at the basket, and the way to put pressure at the basket is through drives. Sometimes teams load up and they take away drives. The next thing you can do is you can post the ball, closer to the basket to create, opportunities for closeouts and for us to drive again. And Steven's done a great job of being a resource for us offensively, to be able to dump the ball into him and him manufacture something good for himself or his teammates.
Billy, this might be a terrible question. I'm not sure.
I doubt it.
For the guy who has the ball in pick and roll,
yes.
Is there an advantage to make it kind of unclear whether he's shooting a floater or throwing a lob, like to sort of disguise it where it could be either one?
Are you saying
is there an advantage?
Is an offensive player? Is an offensive player?
So if Dennis has the ball in pick and roll,
right,
Nerlens is rolling,
right,
and he's shooting. Is there an advantage to sort of disguising whether that's a floater or a lob, whether that's intended to be a shot?
You can. I think what ends up happening is, and I think it's a great question, because what happens is it's really has to do with the guard's takeoff point. Mm-hmm. Because when you're shooting a floater, more often than not, you're going off of one leg, right? So if you start to pick up the ball at the free throw line and you're going off of one leg at the free throw line, that is indicating to the big that more often than not it's probably going to be a lob. And if it's not a lob, you certainly defensively want to give up that shot. Where you create that indecision for that guy that's going down the line or backing up as a big defensively is when that ball starts to get around the dotted circle. Because now you can do both. Now you can shoot the floater and it's still a good shot, and then you can make that lob pass. So a lot of it is the takeoff point of where those guys leave. And the really, really good, experienced defenders that are in those situations, they know when it's going to be a floater or whether it's going to be a lob. And sometimes the deeper you can take it, the better off it is. But also, when you are throwing a lob a little bit deeper, especially for someone like Dennis, who's not like 6'6", you know, you still got to get the ball up. I mean, things are happening so quickly for those guys, and they got to make a split-second decision. And a lot of times in film, as a coach, it's so easy to break it down frame by frame and say, but it's not happening like that in the game. Plus, you're not even talking about the defender that's on his hip, you know, because his man's trying to get back in front of him. So you got a crowded lane, you got a lot of big bodies. But I do think where you pick the ball up from has a lot to do with what kind of message you're sending to the defender.
And is there also some feel with the big then too to know which one he's doing when you're talking about, you know, going inside the dotted line, and it could be either or. Can it confuse the big guy sometimes what he's supposed to do?
Well, I think a lot of times you'll see the big guy. Yeah, I mean the big guy can get not sure if it's a lob or not, but that's why you'll see a lot of times if the defensive big is not back on the roll, you'll see a lot of times those bigs start to go to leave the floor because they don't know if it's a lob or if it's a shot. So they've got to be prepared, because what you don't want to have happen is, I liken it to this: you're a catcher and the batter says he's going to swing. Well, you're still going to put your glove up there because he may miss it. Right. So Right. So it's the same thing. The guy's driving down the lane. Well, he says, okay, I think he's going to shoot it, and you don't jump and the ball sails out of bounds. So those guys always have to expect the pass.
Right.
So they can kind of, as they're timing their jump, they can see the flight of the direction of the ball and where it's going.
Billy, I know you answered a lot of questions about the beginning of your career yesterday, but did you glean anything from Rick Pitino when you were playing for him as he was doing the college to NBA thing? Did you? I said glean.
Oh,
but
okay. All right. Okay.
But
Big word.
Yes. Well, I played for him when he had just come from the Knicks as an assistant coach. So he was young. He's probably, maybe, 32 years old at that point in time. So there was probably a big part of the NBA that was given to our team at that point in time, because it was the first year the three-point line came in. And I think being in the NBA for 2 years, he probably was so much further advanced than most coaches, because nobody in college ever coached with the three-point line. So I think because he had coached 2 years with the three-point line, there was a lot of things probably analytically that are done today speak to how probably far ahead of the game he was at that point in time about how we played. Because all we did, we tried to get up 43s a game, and that's obviously today a low number, but everybody thought that was crazy. But I think being in the NBA, that had a lot to do with it. And then I think, once I became a head coach and then he went back in with the Celtics, I had spent time in training camp there and had spent time with him. So I kind of always had been around it a lot of times. And obviously my playing career professionally was very, very short-lived. I said it was a half a cup of coffee, not even a cup. But so I kind of always been around it. And guys that I was friendly with, I think I mentioned last night, the Rick Carlisles, Coach Pitino, the Van Gundys, Steve Clifford, Spoelstra, a lot of these guys, I've been around for a long time. I've known them for a long time. So, even Stu Jackson coached me, in college, and then Gordy Chiesa was an assistant coach in college. So, I was always around a lot of NBA people, coaches, from that standpoint. But no question, Coach Pitino learned a lot from him about that based on his experiences.
What about the personal side of getting professional guys to buy in?
In terms of what we're doing?
Yeah.
Well, I think that when you have a vision or you have a way that you want to play, I think everybody's got to have a shared vision on that, and that's why there's got to be a lot of communication and talking, about coming to an agreement, on how you want to play. And I think generally when guys have ownership in those kind of things, there's a buy-in because there's a belief there. And then if there's things that you're doing that there's listen, I don't think that that's right, you want to have a discussion. And there's times where I say, okay, that makes sense. Or there's times where I say, no, this is what I really believe we need to do, and here's why. I think you have to do that as a coach too. But there's a balance there, because I think these guys have so many experiences, so many years under their belt as players, and have been in so many games that you want to be able to take from them, from their experiences, because they're getting a different experience as a player, and I have a different experience as a coach, and then that's when you try to work together. So, yeah, I mean, you want to have an identity and a vision of how you want to play, and you want those guys to have that belief that this is how we need to play and these are the things we need to do. Not that you're ever going to be perfect, but you kind of know who you are and how you want to play.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you.